Anyway, joining us now, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Boxing Bob Newman. I can't talk today, Bob. Boxing Bob Newman, the Fight News editor-in-chief. What's up, brother?
Hey, man, everything's good. How about yourself?
Good, good. I hope you had a nice holiday and ready to kick off 2026.
I did, and as well for you. How was your holiday and New Year's?
It was very good. I appreciate that. But
Yeah.
So listen, man, most people during the holidays are sitting, during that month, are sitting home and, well, I can speak for myself, eating and, eating and, eating. But you were traveling the world, catching a lot of these conventions. Why don't you tell us about some of the stuff that was going on there?
Sure. Well, I did 3, and I got done just in the nick of time before Christmas, but and one before Thanksgiving. So we started out, I think around Halloween we left or something for the WBO convention in Bogota, Colombia, which now in hindsight looks like we got while the getting was good. I don't think we're going to be going there anytime soon.
No, especially what they were saying recently. That's funny. I forgot that one was in Colombia.
Yeah, that one was in Colombia. It was great. Their theme was Loma's legacy because, Lomachenko had recently announced his retirement, and he was his first couple titles were actually with the WBO. So among other champs, they had him down there, and that was great. I mean, they had first of all, the WBO had a lot of help from the municipality, the local government in Bogota, and they had this gigantic, like 5-story convention hall allocated just for them, and in it they kind of set up a makeshift museum of a lot of memorabilia like robes and trunks and some video screens and all sorts of stuff just for Vasyl Lomachenko. And like I said, he was there with his manager Igis Klimas, gave us a nice interview, and they had a show, a live card there, which was pretty interesting. A Colombian Olympian turned pro, and men's fights, females fights. So it was an overall good convention. That's only the second WBO one that I've done, because I may have mentioned before, we have a guy, Dave Finger, who normally does them. But in addition to writing for Fight News, he is an actual courtroom judge. And I think he had a full docket, couldn't go. So he asked me to pinch hit for him. But it was good. Weather was good. And their other theme that they had, like, everywhere you turned, there was hashtag belts matter. And you may know what that's in reference to, sanctioning body belts.
Yeah.
So the one kind of theme outside of, paying homage to Lomachenko was, really actually kind of calling for unity among the 4 major sanctioning bodies in regards to, fending off these, whatever it is that that Dana White may be trying to do. And they talked a bit. They actually had a legal expert there, both their own, because every sanctioning body actually has a legal counsel. And they had somebody else on Zoom, and my apologies, I forget who, after 3 conventions in like a 7-week period, my brain's a little fried, and then of course coming home to the holidays. But they had a couple legal experts there, talking about, the attempt to modify or somehow change the Muhammad Ali Act. And, I think they're calling it the revival or something like that. And so they talked about some of the legal ramifications, and their doubts that there is a legal, path forward for that to happen, which they don't want to happen. They feel it protects the fighters. And also something interesting, the president of the WBO talked about the fact that, at least for simplicity's sake, the WBO, even though they're based in Puerto Rico, are American, as is the IBF, based in New Jersey. And the IBF is the one sanctioning body that does their conventions in, like, around Memorial Day, always late in May. And theirs is already set for Vietnam in May, 24th to the 28th. And the other three sanctioning bodies always do theirs sometime in the fall, whether it's October, November, December. But he talked about doing their convention in the fall, that's the WBO, and having the IBF kind of join in, almost like a dual convention. It might not necessarily be a full convention for the IBF, because they'll just be a few months removed from having theirs in May. But to basically put their minds and their boxing brains together, and kind of, form a united front.
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
I got to stop you for a second, because
No problem.
you got me going with this. It sounds, and it's amazing that what you're telling me, all right?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like these same sanctioning bodies that have been pretty much at somewhat war for all these decades, right? Now they're combining, and they've been a lot more civil with the the unification fights and stuff. That it's been financially beneficial for all of them. So it's not as cold of a war as it used to be.
Right.
You're amazing me right now with the obvious attempt to team up, like you're mentioning, to ward off Zuffa Boxing and the potential league that they're trying to form, and that's why they need to modify the Ali Act just for contractual purposes or what have you. But one of the biggest things about this league would eliminate the value or even need for all these sanctioning bodies belts. And I think that that's the underlying reason for the fight. And it's a hard one to do, in my opinion. I mean, we're all looking out for the boxing, boxing purists are looking out for the sport of boxing. And in my opinion, all the titles kind of keep stuff in that gray area.
Well, so explain what you mean by all the titles keep things in the gray area.
Well, because we don't really know who the best fighter is, right? Because you got you have four sanctioning bodies, four guys that are parading around saying they're the world welterweight champion or what have you,
Right.
and one might not be as good as the other, and so on and so forth. So what do? We unify it.
That's
so we
right.
have them all right. So we have them all unified. But if the fighters were forced to fight, better opposition, and we rose to the top like the old days, you would end up with one champion for each weight class. I kind of like that.
Right. And as you mentioned, the Cold War has kind of thawed a little bit, and you see way more unifications now. It's almost a given. There's practically no barriers to that. Like, as far as the heads of the governing bodies are concerned, they almost never say no to it. It usually does mean more money. And then, of course, the only roadblock with that is when you have a guy with all four belts, or a gal, and but each of the sanctioning bodies has a different number one contender. And of course, they have a certain amount of time that they have to make a mandatory. And if you've got four different mandatory contenders, it's virtually impossible. But not.
That's the ace. That's the ace in the hole that the sanctioning bodies have to keep them separating them. You know what I mean? And then they go through that whole unification again. I mean, look, it depends how. I didn't mean to get you off topic, but
no, that's okay.
It depends. It depends how you look at it. I mean, everybody says the same thing you said, where they go, oh, there's more money. You can make more money with a belt. Well, that's only because that's the way it's being promoted. I've thought this league out, and it's very hard to take the top fighters that are around right now and assume they're going to walk away from their alliance with the sanctioning bodies and the monies and the shots, the fights that they get themselves that are going to be available to them. I get it. That's an impossible thing. But
Right.
at this point, if you started this league and you started with younger fighters and you signed them to contracts similar to the UFC model, and then the number 9 guy fights the number 8 guy and moves up that ladder, theoretically, at the end of the day, and depending upon the pool of fighters, because you never know how many of those fighters are going to enter into that arena, theoretically, you have tougher fights earlier on. Like what we see today, in my opinion, is tough fights after you got 2 different guys as champions and then they fight each other. That's their first real tough fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that part is true. I was thinking about that actually earlier today. There's when you go on message boards or whatever you want to call them, where people are spouting off about rankings or whatever, and they say, well, how did this guy get to be number 1? Well, for example, with the recent Inoue Picasso fight, somebody was ranting and raving about how Picasso got to be number 1. Who did he fight? And and this person was actually it seemed like an Inoue hater, which is baffling to me.
You're damn
how anybody could not like him, but they said he's fighting nobodies, and then they said, look at the record of the guy that he just fought, who was number 1. And you look and you go, okay, yeah, it's true. I kind of don't know too many, if any, of those guys that Picasso fought to get to number 1. But, as I was thinking about this, you've got fighters coming up, from the time they turn pro. And if they're not going to fight, another undefeated guy, which you don't see that too often, a couple of 8-0 guys, they want to keep their record going. And not risk it. It happens now and then, but not too often. You're going to get to that point, of being number 1 through attrition. And I actually challenge the fans who were saying, well, who was he fought? Well, you name me without looking at a magazine or on the internet or whatever. You name me guys who are not one of the 4 champions, or in the case of Inoue, he's the only champion, but you name me 10 122 pounders off the top of your head.
Ask him to name you 3.
You can't.
Well,
so how can you complain that he's fighting somebody you never heard of? Well, you probably never heard of any of them.
But the only way you hit it right earlier. These are they're not real boxing people. They're just social media tough guys. But the truth of the matter is the only thing you can ever blame a fighter for is ducking a fighter that's available to them in their weight class during their time fighting. That's it. You can't take an era that may have less than stellar fighters during a certain period of time and then blame the champions for not fighting anybody. It's not their fault. As long as they fight everybody available, you can't. And you know what? That Picasso was a good fighter. He wasn't a schlep. He wasn't a layup. Even
right. And and maybe let's give credit to Inoue to making him look average. Or
again, no, I agree with you. Again, that's like a Lomachenko, same way. He used to do that.
Yeah. When people, another name for the fans that you're talking about, the internet tough guys.
Yeah.
You may see this, around the internet, casuals.
Yeah.
Guys that just pop on here and there to see a fight. They don't even know who they're watching. And they'll just hoot and holler from the rafters about the quality of these guys. But like I said, they don't know the fighters anyway. But going back to the point about when I said, it's virtually impossible to, to face, to make all 4 of your mandatories. If it's 4 different guys or whatever, well, Inoue puts that to rest. The guy has fought 4 times a year, if I'm not mistaken, definitely this year, but I think the year before that. And he fights frequently as a champ. And if you stay healthy, don't get injured, your opponent doesn't fall out. I know he had one guy actually fall out. My apologies, I'm forgetting the tall, lanky kid from England, from Australia fell out. So Inoue had to fight this Korean guy who nobody ever heard of. And that was one of the gripes on one of the forums I saw, where they were pointing out, who was the Korean fighter. Well, and I explained, I normally I try not to respond to people on the forums, especially, in my capacity with Fight News. But and I don't know if this was one of those situations. So I think it was on Facebook or something. So I was a little bit safe there if they didn't know who I was. But I explained the kid that he was supposed to fight, who I think was a number 1 contender, fell out with an injury. And then he was so tall anyway for the weight, he ended up going up to featherweight and fighting the WBA champ Nick Ball. So, he whether it was a legit injury or illness or whatever the case was, that's not Inoue's fault. And I get a little bit bent too when guys are going on about, well, this guy ducked that guy and so on and so forth. No, it's the fighters will fight anybody. It's their managers and promoters that are, as you know, pulling the strings and end up either pulling their fighter out or coming up with an injury or whatever. Because the fighter will fight anybody. Of course, they want to get paid too.
Hey, that's why I love the UK boxing scene, because those fighters, if they lose a fight, they don't lose any kind of fan base or anything, so they do put the kids in tougher. I love it. You mentioned Nick Ball. He's one of my favorites, but.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned the UK and you've observed that loyalty with their fans. You and I are both old enough. We can go back to Frank Bruno, and they called him the lovable loser. It didn't matter if the guy lost. His fan base didn't go anywhere. And I think it was, 4 tries before he finally won the title, but he finally did.
Yep. No.
And
we mentioned him earlier. We were talking about Frank Bruno. But so you were at the WBC as well.
Yep, that was actually next. So that came near the end of November, about 3 weeks after getting back from Colombia. That was in Bangkok, Thailand. And
I saw some of your videos that you posted. But go ahead, I didn't mean to go. They were just great. I love the view, like the one with you guys were. What is that? Was that a rickshaw?
No, they're called a tuk-tuk, and it's basically a motorcycle with a 3-wheeler with a little pulling a rickshaw on a motorcycle though. But
I saw 2 versions of it. One from your view, and then one looking at you guys. Why?
Yeah.
They were great. But anyway,
that was our free day. But believe it or not, that was the day when everyone else was going home, and for whatever reason, flying back on a Friday was unbelievably more expensive than coming back on a Saturday. So I said, that's a no-brainer, man. I want to have a free day to just no boxing, no articles, no photographs, no deadlines, and just go, see the town. Now, I've been there 4 times before, but I was with the Fight News owner who's never been there. So we went and basically we did the Buddha tour. And, saw the reclining Buddha and the lucky Buddha and the big Buddha. And, it's not necessarily a case of you've seen one Buddha, you've seen them all. But it was good to get out and just, let the mind be free of boxing for a little bit and enjoy the weather, because we knew what we were coming back to here. But, they had a show as well. They did a live show in the middle of the week. Actually, I think on a Wednesday, they had their vacant light flyweight title filled. And, that was a case where one of the challengers fell out, and they had to get a guy, at the last second from oh, my apologies, Zarate. I think he was from Venezuela, which we won't talk about Venezuela, but
Yeah,
they got him. He put up,
picking all the countries that
yeah,
you're not going to be going back to.
yeah. It's get it while the getting's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But decent show, international, one woman's fight. Fighters from all over the place. Thai, Australia. The Australian guy was actually Australia by way of, I can't remember, Liberia or someplace in Africa. China, Japan, and then a female fighter who's British but who has grown up in China for years because her dad had a job there or something like that. So it was quite an international show, but that was a good show. BC conventions are always massive and a lot going on and a lot to cover, sometimes simultaneously. You could have a meeting in this room and in another room at the same time, and you got to ask like one of your buds, hey man, let me know what I've missed when I come back. I got to go run into this room and get some pictures, get some notes, so on and so forth.
They went through the mandatory titles, right?
WBC kind of always does that. I mean, to some degree, they all do, but the WBC does two separate meetings, one about rankings and one about the mandatories and when they were last made, and basically what the mandatory defense status is for the champ in each weight class. So, for example, and don't ask me to name which champ and all that right now because it's been, almost a month, but this champ in this weight class doesn't have a mandatory right now because he just made one or whatever, or he's got two to make because he won a vacant title. And I think that's what the WBC does. If you win a vacant title, you have to do two mandatories in a row, different things like that. So they do that, but then they do the ratings usually the day before. And sometimes you'll get promoters and managers that'll come up to the microphone. So it's a big assembly. The board of directors and people on the ratings committee or the mandatory committee are sitting up at the dais, and then someone will come up to the microphone, and inevitably every time there will be somebody like at the ratings committee meeting where mostly everybody's trying to stump for their fighter to move up in the rankings, and someone will talk about a mandatory thing, and then they have to remind the guy, that's tomorrow, this is ratings. Oh, I'm sorry. And then they go sit down. So
didn't they announce the Crawford thing there?
Yes, they did. And that was a situation that I was a little bit miffed at because, and I'll explain what I mean by that.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
The weigh-ins for the title fight were happening at exactly the same time as they were going down. I think, I don't know if it was the ratings or the mandatories. I actually don't remember right now, but they were going down or going up. Usually they start at heavyweight and go down. Sometimes they say, let's make it crazy and we'll go up, from strawweight up or whatever. But I was, I figured, hey, there's a world title fight happening here. I need to go over, get the weigh-ins, report the weights as, we always do when there's a fight going on, or we rely on someone, at the scene to send us the weights and maybe the two main protagonists squaring off or whatever. So I was down the hall at that room, and when I came back, James Blears, who works for the WBC, he's a Brit that lives in Mexico City and works for the WBC, said, "You just missed it." And I think they stripped Crawford or whatever, and it had to do. It was a bit ugly, even though Crawford wasn't there. He was invited, but we now know why he wasn't there. But
he was invited, hoping that he brought his checkbook.
Exactly. Well, he didn't show up, but I guess, and I didn't know this until this was all happening. He didn't pay the WBC portion of the sanctioning fee. I guess all the organizations came to a consensus to normally all four sanctioning bodies ask for 3% of the purse. So I don't know what he made, 50 million. And the BO, BF, and BA made it 0.5%, which was, I think that's 250,000. The BC made it 0.6%, which made it 300,000. So whether it was on, principle or what, Crawford said, I'm not paying it. And I don't know if, I think he did pay the other three sanctioning bodies, but not the BC. He, obviously, you may have seen some videos that he put up online, where he disparaged the BC and the president, Mauricio Suleiman, pretty badly. Obviously, nobody likes that. Mauricio especially doesn't like, being called out and having, allegations made about what the money goes to, so on and so forth. There were some other members of WBC that felt bad that it was getting ugly. And in the end, they had a lot of times when they have guests that are there, they'll have things like posters or placards. And in this case, they had these cool, funny caricatures of the fighters. And they had one of Crawford that was huge. It's like 4 feet tall or whatever. And so that particular person brought it out near the end of not that meeting, but the end of the convention, when basically it was like the okay, we're closing the convention. It's been great, blah, blah, blah. And it was brought out, and she said, we're all going to sign this. And if you want to come up and sign it, everybody sign it too. We're going to, make sure he gets this. And Mauricio, he kind of, it had been a couple days. He kind of calmed down a little bit and said, we wish him well. He didn't get back into the whole politics of it all. And then that was that. So, and then the retirement announcement came. So he hadn't retired by this time yet.
No, he actually retired after the convention.
Right, exactly. So, it's not a moot point. Like, he still didn't pay them. But yeah, he retired after that, which I don't think had anything that he didn't say like, oh God, my feelings are hurt, I can't go on with this. I think, it was probably brewing and he was going to do it anyway. But that's what happened there. But the Ali Act and the kind of the solidarity type of thing against, Zuffa wasn't mentioned, and I don't remember if Dana White by name was mentioned at the WBC convention, but it was one of those elephants in the room. There was not very specific talk about, the four sanctioning bodies aligning, so on and so forth, at the WBC convention. But it was, like, for example, I'm sure you heard, that Dana White told Mauricio at the Canelo Crawford fight, you're not getting up in the ring with those belts. And I guess Mauricio told him, well, you better have a couple of huge security guys to stop me. And he got up there and he put on the hat and the t-shirt and gave him the belt. And as well as this, a lot of times for major fights, the WBC will do like some kind of a special belt. And it doesn't, I see guys getting bent out of shape about that on forums too. And I don't really think it's anything worth getting bent about. It's just when you have a fight of, huge magnitude like that was, and history being made, it's just a commemorative belt. Who cares? It's not another, like, it's not a fifth organization or something. It's just,
they don't charge for it. They don't charge.
No, it's just a here that, it's
right.
It's just a gift for you, for whoever the winner is, so no, they don't charge for it.
Yeah, no. It's not a passable title like a belt.
No, it's just commemorative. And people get bent because, like, I think the WBC is the only one that does that. So, I always say, like, there's folks that, the keyboard warriors, they jump on these forums and they make all these assumptions and they talk about rigged ratings and all kinds of different things. Even, back in, like, let's say, the ESPN days of, say, like 10, 15 years ago when, Teddy Atlas would rant and rave. And I love Teddy, but I'm just, making an observation about the, we be collecting was what the WBC stood for, and we be asking is what the WBA stood for, and so on and so forth. And one media guy who was noteworthy and people knew, Bob Sheridan, who did, basically called all the King Vision fights, everything that Don King ever did, practically.
Colonel Bob.
Colonel Bob. he said, you know what? These guys, they've got a platform. They're on television. They're ranting and raving, and they're invited. They're welcome to come to these conventions. He would come to a lot of them. He would actually sit and take the judge's exam, the ABC judge's exam, just to see, where he fell on it. And he said, why would I want to hurt the sport in which I'm making my living by decrying it every day and, ranting and raving? And I agreed with him on that. I interviewed him once and we talked about that. Like, I understand if there's, that there's a wrong that needs to be righted, but when you don't know and you think something kind of stinks of something, but you don't have the facts, all you're doing is riling a lot of other people up.
It's even worse now.
The keyboard warriors get riled up. And
there's you can't even. Yeah, I don't even know what's true anymore. You got people. Where I go to find out when if the news is true.
I think so.
I go to Fight News, fightnews.com, of course.
Well,
but,
no opinion. We stay away from opinion, which is why I don't pay attention to the other sites. And even though we do have social media accounts, Fight News has a YouTube, a Facebook, an Instagram, and an X or Twitter account. But that really is like, for revenue generation and but not spreading hearsay. If we have anything up on any of those social accounts, it's coming from articles or maybe smaller snippets of longer interviews that we do that we'll have up on our YouTube channel or whatever. It's not these announcements of fights that are not really happening, that are fake, and you see a ton of that on Facebook where these people, they actually make fake posters of a fight that's not signed, and in some cases it never did get signed.
You know why they do that, right?
Well, clicks.
Well, yeah, of course. That's the real reason. But no, I was just saying they want to be in case it comes true, they could say they were the first ones to report it.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really think of that, but
Bob, I'm running out of time, and I got you. I got to know. Tell us about some of the changes that you guys have made to the website, and you mentioned the social media. I mean, you told me that we were going to kick off. You're the first official guest of 2026, and we were going to kick off some stuff for the site. So how's that going?
It's going good. I mean, we still have some we actually unveiled the new, skin, if you want to call it that, the new look, during, I'm trying to remember if it was the BC, I think the BC or maybe the BA convention. We're like in the middle of it. So basically there's a new look, which, you yourself, I think, have gotten to see. And you also experienced, there was some glitches in the beginning, and there's going to be, a few other things that we want to change. Like we're working on the rankings of the 4 sanctioning bodies so that we can, you can actually click the tab for those and see them, kind of in 4 columns side by side from heavyweight all the way down to strawweight. It's going to have a slightly different look than the way it used to on the old, the old platform. So that's one way that one thing our webmaster is still kind of working on. I think, our contact us page isn't quite there, but we've, I think we actually right now we have on our Facebook page, we actually have a contest, if you will, or a drawing for a subscription to Paramount Plus, which, is going to be, they're getting into the boxing game. So there are going to be some drawings. We have some T-shirts that are going to be available. We came up with a design and everything, but now we've got to do some ordering to actually physically have those on hand. So, but largely, and I'm sure I'm missing some things here. but largely the look is different, and we're going to have tabs. So the other thing that's different, I'm sorry, is that there's some other combat sports that we're going to be covering and putting news up for, whether it's, whether we're actually at the events or we get press releases from the promoters. So
Hey,
bare
Bob,
knuckle. Yeah.
you're leaving out a really important improvement that you guys made, and
Okay.
I'm gonna remind you, you're more cell phone friendly. Wasn't that one of the biggest things that you
Well, yes, the ads.
what do you
So
mean?
we are going to have some sponsorship, but right now, yeah, you're right. And I told you I was leaving something out.
No, but I mean, because it's to me, it's a heck of a lot easier to read on the cell phone. That was some upgrades that you guys
Well,
made.
you know what? Yeah, you're right about that, and I apologize because as the new owner loves to remind me, I'm one of the dinosaurs that still does so much on a desktop. He
So
says he
do
doesn't
I.
know.
No, so I got to admit, so do I. Don't get me wrong. I was bragging about the cell phone, but I'm usually on my computer. I just like.
Yeah, I mean, in a pinch, I will actually, if I'm like not at home and something's kind of important that I get an email on or whatever, I'll post it on my phone. And obviously it's smaller and I've got to be a little bit more careful. But photos, if it's, photos are a little trickier because I've got to downsize them first. And we're photo based. So you'll notice every single new headline, um, you won't see an article on Fight News anymore that doesn't have some sort of visual, whether it's an actual photo of the fight or posing for weigh-ins or the banner for the promoter or whatever. So every article is going to have the backdrop of a photo with the headline right over it. So, and that's a little tricky to do on the phone because I can't downsize the photos on my phone, and they can't be massive like they are when they actually come in sometimes through emails. So that I have to do at home. But we actually have kind of like some place cards for the different situations, like fight announcement or fight result or weigh-ins or whatever, with our new logo on it that I do have handy. And I can pop those on my phone, and then when I get back home, I can swap it out for the proper photo or whatever. So, yeah, and there's still going to be a few more tweaks, that we're going to do as they come up. But I'm happy with the look. I'm happy with the readership because it keeps climbing, and it's like the phoenix rising from the ashes, or almost the ashes. So I feel that we're well on our way. We've gotten a lot of positive responses, but yeah, I think we're well on our way to resuming our former status as the go-to source. And like, you and I both know, we want to be like Walter Cronkite, just the news.
Yeah, well, that's why I've been going to that site all these years, and I still do, and it's the only one because I'm opinionated. That's what I do. But when I
Right.
want to know the facts, I just
Right.
go to you guys because there's not another one like it, to be honest with you.
Well, I know. Listen, man, you've got enough of your own opinions. You don't want to listen to anybody else's.
You know what? Because if somebody had more than me, I'd take it personal. So,
Yeah.
but
Have you heard about I hope it's still true, the February 28th, I think it's a Manny Pacquiao promotion show at Turning Stone.
no, because if you recall, I was relying on you to let me know, and you said that you, as soon as you heard, you would. No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I just heard it from a one of the officials that's with that commission. So there's nothing on BoxRec yet. I don't know who the fighters are going to be, but we got something to look forward to in another month.
Yeah. Well,
so hopefully, if the weather's cooperating, I'll see you there.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, and when you do find out some information, email it to me or text it or something. But I appreciate you coming on, and anytime you have something that you want to get out and you want to come on, just let me know and we'll get you on, brother.
Well, I will, and if there's something, you want to talk about, likewise, just give me a shout. All righty.
Sounds
All right.
good. I hope
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
All right, brother. Take
All
care.
Right. Bye-bye.
Take care. That's my man, Boxing Bob Newman. And man, I wish I might even ask him to come back on and finish telling us about what was going on. I mean, it was real intriguing about the conventions. It's so cool that he gets to go there, and it's not like you just sit. What I was glad he got across was it's not like you're just sitting there watching a film. I mean, there's so many different things going on at the same time. There could be a clinic across the hall, and he's covering something else. So great stuff, great stuff.